Hi, everybody. I am Rachel. I am the engagement editor at Belt Magazine. Thank you all so much for being here. I am so excited about this event. We've been working on a couple of different event series. We have another event coming up in April and May, which keep an eye out for those. But this one and Njaimeh had been brainstorming, and I'm just super excited about it. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Belt Magazine, and then I will pass it back over to Njaimeh so you can all hear from our wonderful panelists. So Belt Magazine is a digital publication by and for the Rust Belt and Greater Midwest. The publication was founded by Anne Trubeck in 2013 as an antidote to shallow, distorted representations of the region. And we pursue that mission through the features, essays, poetry, and photography we publish on our website, beltmag.com. The goal is to tell a story of the region by and for and with the people who live here, which we see happening, of course, with all of our panelists today. This work goes beyond the stories we publish. Our team works to foster a larger conversation about the past, present, and future of the Rust Belt and Greater Midwest, engaging regional communities through events like this, partnerships, and other projects. You can find out more about us on our website, beltmag.com. You can join our newsletter list to stay up to date with our stories and other events. And if you want to help us keep paying writers and panelists to be able to keep publishing stories and hosting events like this, you can also donate and become a member there. I'll drop a link in the chat for that as well. So that brings us here today to documenting home, centering community narratives through photography, a discussion with three incredible photographers. I've so been enjoying seeing everybody's work featured the past couple weeks, and our incredibly talented and visionary visual editor, Njaimeh, who I will hand it over to now to introduce the panelists for the evening. And thank you again, everybody, so much for being here. Thank you to PEN America, who is co-sponsoring this event. And I will, pass it over. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel. And again, thank you all for being with us tonight. So my name is Njaimeh Njie. As Rachel said, I'm visual editor here at Belt. In this job, I get the immense privilege of working with photographers to publish photo essays that highlight their unique experiences living in the Rust Belt. The initial idea for this event was to commemorate Women's History Month by looking closely at some of the work of women who are doing visual storytelling in this region. It was particularly important to me and to all of us at Belt to connect with Black, Latinx, and Indigenous storytellers in order to deepen the visual narrative that's told about the Rust Belt. We know that we've always been here and that we continue to document our communities. But at Belt, we feel very committed to making sure the stories we share actually reflect the nuanced realities of life in this region. I learned of each of our panelists this evening through some of my research on contemporary photographers in the region. From the jump, I was drawn to what each of them are making. They've all got a really sharp eye and a unique aesthetic. And I think that there's a heartbeat in each of their work that makes it feel vibrant in a way that jumps off of the screen. And so as I did a little bit more digging, I think a thread emerged that further unites their work. And it's that these are all artists who are engaging in community-based practices that involve research and also that tap into personal history as a means of contextualizing the past, documenting and preserving the present, and also thinking about the future. And so I want us to have as much time with our panelists as possible. They've each prepared a brief presentation of their work. And so I'm gonna introduce each of them. They're gonna make their presentations, and then we're gonna come back together to have a bit of a Q&A. So first up, we've got Samantha Cabrera Friend, who is an artist, writer, and visual journalist from Chicago. Her work explores the relationships of feminine spectacle, performance, community, and identity production as they relate to global experiences of womanhood, celebration, and survival. She is a graduate of the School of Visual Arts and is the founder and curator of Quinceañera Archives, a visual repository that fosters online dialogues and community-driven research around the historical importance of memory work and quinceañera practice. Her projects often center citizen collaboration and communities accessed by shared passions and lived experience. Having exhibited nationally and internationally, Samantha continues her practice to challenge the defining process and phenomena of modern Western value in academic, journalistic, and fine art spheres. It is our pleasure to welcome Samantha with us this evening. Take it away.
Thank you so much. And Njaimeh, thank you so much. It's so great to be in conversation with you as well, Rachel and Jaida. This is really brilliant. I actually knew of your guys' work again through the internet, and it's just like a really exciting moment to be in conversation together. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen. And all right, right on? Yes. What's up? My name is Samantha Cabrera, friend, and I'm going to talk today just for a few minutes about my practice. And the best way I think to do that would be to talk about documenting what we know or making work on what we know. And to start off, I have a quote by someone who I was impacted by freshman year of my university studies, who holds a practice which has parts good and bad, but just this quote alone is really, I think, what opened a lot of things up for me my freshman year when studying. And it's on the nature of work, specifically photography, and a critique or celebration. So this is the artist Martin Parr. He says, "Criticism is hypocrisy. Society is hypocrisy. I'm a tourist. I'm a consumer. I do the things that I photograph and can be criticized of." And I love this, and this really busted things down for me open for me, because it was so relieving to know that I can love something and hate something at the same time. I can, as well as acknowledging that I am an active participant, and really validating that I am an active participant in everything I'm making. I'm not a fly on the wall. There's no objective view. I'm actually one with the work. So if I'm criticizing it, I too am criticizing myself. If I'm celebrating, I too am celebrating myself. And for me, that shows up in my work on a spectrum, whether that is me being an artist as an experiencer, like the left, or an artist as a reporter, or an artist as an analyst, or artist as an activist. And the line reference actually on the top is from a amazing LA feminist historic artist, Suzanne Lacy. You guys can look up her work on the side, but she is someone that coined the term like social practice and new genre public art. But yeah, basically, this is what I would say. I could divide my practice up to a little bit, whether that's, artist as experiencer. This is my favorite place to be, and it's the most private place, as we kind of see in this really beautiful illustration on the top. And this is something maybe we do every day. Maybe you're being observant, maybe you're not, but you're experiencing it, and you're an artist. So I believe that you don't really turn that button off. You're still filling up your life and your whole practice by just experiencing. Then artist as a reporter, which is something that I'm so grateful. I did not have any reporting skills, any knowledge, or truthfully much trust in journalism until I moved back home to Chicago and came into a community, which is City Bureau. At City Bureau is a civic journalism lab that covers work on the south and west side of Chicago, and they are just fire people, basically spearheading the movement of civic journalism, which means heavily involving the community that which you're working in, which is something I already did naturally, and something I'm sure a lot of people already do naturally. So it made me really excited to know that we use these journalistic and reporting skills already in a lot of our work. So we might as well stand to strengthen them. And so that's me doing some reporting work, which also opened me up to audio, and a lot of interest in audio work there. And an analyst is really starting to look at for me, that my focus was looking at the information available or information not available on the history of the tradition of the quinceañera. And for me, that meant starting an archive, or really just being a part of this, wanting to make a conversation outside of myself and analyzing things. So it doesn't have to be my work, but it can be a work about the subject that you have great interest in. And then activism, I really equate with advocacy as well. And advocacy doesn't necessarily mean you're picketing outside. It can also just mean you're pushing your practice outside of yourself. So before anyone might think like this is overwhelming or where does my work, start, I don't know anything about this. Maybe it's just beyond the scope of the practice at this moment, meaning I might not exist as all 4 of these things at once. And I really, depending on the timeline or the budget or what you're doing. So I just extend myself grace and always know that I want to learn more, but it might be beyond the scope of things. And where this, of course, I wasn't born knowing this or really implementing any of this knowledge. So it began with, it began with making work in school, which was, I went to school in New York, but I was not making work in New York City. I was making work when I came home of things I knew about, things I wanted to know more about, things that looked like home. And that's when I really started to look at, nature as entertainment, kind of female and youth societal cultural expectations. Really, sometimes we ask girls to do some questionable things without questioning things, and as well as the absurdity and hypocrisy of my medium, which I choose to work in, which is equal parts celebratory and ready for critique. And then I moved to Chicago, or moved after school and after working, which I really didn't plan on staying, which is really, I always think is funny, because what you don't plan for is, of course, what just ends up, other things just end up happening. So this is some quinceañera life that was very public, in the public eye in Chicago. And ideally, I think I really believe in place, and more so in Midwest, and I think in Chicago, I felt like the more I gave to the city, the more it gave to me, in terms of, yes, like availability and work, but also in terms of like jobs and things that you're really interested in. So this was in Cleveland, Ohio, and an assignment I got. This is when I'm working in Back of the Yards, the neighborhood in Chicago for City Bureau. This is my actual backyard. And this is just like, I guess, a testament to something that I think is not possible everywhere, where the more you invest yourself in the community and the people, I think the more you get back. So for me, that was really making it possible to make physical permanence in my work. I was able to be an artist in residence and have more space and time and really make prints and things, which I wasn't able to do, unfortunately, outside of school. So this is just a bit of my practice. And then when you get to have that space, I think, and that time, it's like and this is really a recent array of my work within the past 3 years or so of my large format practice, and me looking at quinceañera archives and quinceañera culture and our societal and cultural expectations. But yeah, the more I think it's something specific to Chicago, having the ability to slow down and hold these conversations about community, about engagement, or, past that of just like a job. And it's something that I felt really, really fed and nourished by. And it's something that although I had a New York training and all these other conventional art education, it was really cool to get like a lot of civic work and civic sensibilities by nature of being in Chicago. And this image kind of says it all. It was taken at the Avon Festival, which the story was about a rise of Latinx workers doing amazing for Avon, but is Avon doing amazing to support these workers? And these women have a shirt that says, "Quieres ser tu propio jefe," which is like, do you want to be your own boss? So they're asking women, do you want to be your own boss? And I do, and I think we all do. And that's where like these conversations around art are great as well. But as far as like making money and stuff as well, I think that comes with making personal work. So it's not to say, oh, you should have the privilege of only having an artist residency and only making work for yourself. No, but I think what I'm trying to say is, if it's a something that's possible in the Midwest is if you are choosing between maybe feeling pressured to take a job in whatever art form or whatever medium you work in that maybe you don't agree with, and maybe it's a team you don't agree with or something that might be not part of your community, versus maybe taking a job with at a coffee shop or at a store where I worked for many, many years. You know, I would choose the latter. I would choose the store. I would choose something like that that still lets you actually make personal work, because at the end of the day, your personal work and the work you make for just beautifully yourself and out of your pure impulse and photographing and making what you know is what's going to get you paid, and it's what's going to pay yourself as well. So I feel like and I couldn't have done it without a lot of these beautiful local Chicago connects. So that's what I would, yeah, should do a huge shout out. Thank you to all these people, or screenshot, or just know that these are really good resources and people to reach out to in Chicago or otherwise. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of in our little pods, but I'm going to give you a round of applause. That was amazing. And I think the thing that really inspires me about your work is you're working at so many different intersections, and you are a part of the community. Like you said, you're documenting what you know. And, you know, it's hard to go wrong with that. I think you have a very generative practice. Again, as you said, you're giving and you're receiving. It's this kind of cycle that I think is really beautiful. So thank you for sharing a bit of yourself and your work with us. I didn't mention this, but please some folks are doing it already. Please feel free to use the chat to leave comments, to show our panelists some love. Also, you can use the Q&A function to ask questions as well, and we'll try to loop back around to those at the end. So next up, we have got Jaida Gray Eagle. So Jaida is an Oglala Lakota photojournalist, producer, beadwork artist, and writer living and working in St. Paul, Minnesota. She is a Report for America Fellow with the Sahan Journal, covering the immigrant and refugee stories of the Twin Cities. She is also researching Indigenous photography at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts as an ongoing former curatorial fellow. Jaida is a co-producer on the Sisters Rising documentary, which is the story of 6 Native American women reclaiming personal and tribal sovereignty in the face of ongoing sexual violence against Indigenous women in the United States, and has recently received an honorable mention at the Big Sky Doc Festival. She is passionate about bringing awareness to Indigenous issues, especially those which impact Indigenous women. All right, Jaida Gray Eagle, thank you for joining us today, and I'm gonna pass it off to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really, really honored to be here. And Samantha and Rachel, I'm such a fan. I can't believe we're on a panel together. This is really a big deal to me. So thank you so much. Forgive me as I prepare this. A fun fact, my school never took away my .edu email address. I'm still using PowerPoint from school, but hey, you know, we all do what we got to do. Yes, so I am Jaida Gray Eagle. I'm Oglala Lakota. I really like to start off by introducing myself in my language. So Hanmadakia pe matopajuta machia pe abetu washe. I like to speak in my language because, you know, where I stand, this is the language that was here prior to colonization. And it just feels powerful to me to do that and to open up the space in that way. Yes, I think I'm just gonna go through kind of like an overview of my work and what I've been working on the last few years. As I said before, in the written article, you know, I've always kind of been a photographer. I don't ever really remember this moment where I'm like, yeah, I'm a photographer. Like it just happened. It's just who I am. And so a few years ago, prior to getting into photojournalism, I went with my college to visit Standing Rock and what was happening there with the water protector movement in North Dakota. And this was before, you know, I had any relationships with any visual editors or anything like that. Like I didn't even know that that was a thing. So I had visited the camps with a group of students, and we had brought art supplies with us. And I had gotten there a few days prior to the rest of the students showing up. And I just went around the camp and I sat in camps with people and I interviewed them. And I really have no idea why I did that. I just did. I have no training in journalism. I had no training in journalism, I should say. And I was doing photographs, and you know, one of those photographs ended up making it to the cover of the book, edited by Nick Estes and just Karen Dillon. But again, this is like kind of what really solidified in my mind that this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I wanted to provide for community. And I thought that it was important that I was documenting this movement as a young Indigenous woman. And so that kind of led into my ongoing personal project that I continue to work on to this day. And that's titled Wia. And Wia is the Lakota word for femme. I don't want to say that it's our Lakota word for women, because it encompasses far more than the English word woman does. And so that's why I used it, because I wanted to honor, you know, our true spirit and our trans and our non-binary relatives as well. So that's why I used the word Wia. And this personal project to me, it really encompasses like every part of my practice that I do as a photographer. So I approach with consent, you know, I approach with collaboration. I make sure that whoever I am photographing is as comfortable as I am in making these portraits. And so each one of these has their own unique little story to them. But the one that I'll go into the most is this one. And so this is a really wonderful Oglala Lakota artist, and her name is Michaela Patton. And for her portrait, what she wanted to do was, she is really into elk teeth. And elk teeth were primarily used as trade items, you know, prior to colonization, and we wore them on dresses or on shirts as like a form of currency to kind of show our wealth to the community. And so we were talking back and forth about, what do elk teeth mean today, right? Like, we don't really have the population of elk that we once had. You know, people don't really hunt elk as much as they used to. So she wanted to kind of talk about our relationship with elk and how we can represent that today. And she said, I think it would look like elk teeth on my skin. I think that this is what it would represent, because it's something that I am doing because I'm taking care of myself, and we have to use fake elk teeth. So we did it. We did fake elk teeth on her back, and this is the portrait that we made. I think this is a really beautiful portrait. I understand that not a lot of people have the visual language to understand what elk teeth are. So I really kind of like to go in to talk about this image more and what it means historically for us, and what elk teeth mean to you know, Lakota people. And the next few slides are kind of like what I've been working on lately. So kind of within this past year, this is a series that I had worked on with the Minnesota Public Radio called Indigenous Changemakers, where we profiled Indigenous people within the Minnesota community who are essentially just badasses and making changes, and you know, just taking up space. the person in the middle with the yellow skirt is our lieutenant governor. The young woman on the left side, maybe your right side, is a Dakota teacher. She's fluent in Dakota. One of these women, works in economic recovery, and then the other one is an artist. And so it's just like this really huge profile of all of these really amazing people who are just kicking ass. And more of the work that I do at the Sahan Journal is, we cover all spectrums of the immigrant and refugee communities in and around the Twin Cities. But we are actually starting to expand more to covering all communities of color, which is really exciting to me. Whenever I first started, we were a team of 6, now we are a team of 12, and we keep building. So this is really incredible. And of course, I think, I would be amiss to kind of not talk about what's going on currently, and I'm not gonna go that deep into it because I'll probably get a little emotional. It's been hard here, and it's been hard everywhere, but we are at the heart of everything that's going on. So yeah, I've been out, and I've I've been through it, and yeah, you probably can notice I can't really talk about it too much, but this is something that this slide alone is everything that I've done just in March. And this isn't all of the work that I've done in March because some of it hasn't been published yet, but I mean, I like to kind of show whenever I do speak the work that I've done, within the past few weeks, to just kind of like offer a reflection to how much I'm out, but also offer reflection how much we're all out and how much we're doing and we're putting ourselves out there as photographers. I think, you don't really think about photographers as also going through it because there isn't that many of us, but we are. So yeah, that's all I got for today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaida, for sharing, especially in considering the moment and everything that's going on. I know it has to be incredibly heavy for you and the community and everyone who's documenting and telling these stories. So the fact that you joined us tonight and could speak and share about the work and just what you're bringing to it, we have a lot of gratitude for that. And I have some questions, in my mind, especially thinking of a lot of the connections between you and Samantha's work. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm gonna toss it to Rachel, our third and final panelist who's gonna be presenting for the evening. All right. So Rachel Elise Thomas is a Detroit-born and based artist who obtained her BFA in photography at the College for Creative Studies. Her work has been featured in numerous print and digital publications. Being a collage artist, documentary, and editorial photographer has given Rachel the versatility to tell stories in different ways. Rachel's warm and introspective personality further adds to the art and imagery she creates. She gathers inspiration from vintage magazines and advertisements, family artifacts, old photographs, decorative paper, textiles, and printed words, assembling imagery and materials that invite the viewer to deeply examine the messages presented. These messages revolve around identity, ancestry, and spirituality. So, without further ado, Rachel, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful welcome. And I'm so happy to be connected with Jaida and Samantha. This is so great. Thank you for this opportunity. To add, he pretty much covered it all. Documentarian, collage artist, also an instructor based here in Detroit and in the suburbs as well. For my presentation, I'm briefly covering 3 projects that mean the most to me, things I've done in recent years. So let's get started. Okay, cool. All right. So the first project I'll be covering is the Aretha Franklin Community Tribute. She passed away on August 16th, 2018, and on August 31st, her funeral was held at Greater Grace Temple here in Detroit, Michigan. So I was hired, play from the parents. There we go. So I was hired by a publication to just go around and just get the community's reaction to her death. And not also mostly her death, but just a celebration around it. I feel that as in the Black community, death is not the ending, it's also a celebration. And what's so interesting about this is that the night before the funeral, it was announced that they were admitting a certain amount of public, the general public, to come and view the funeral. So all these people were standing in line to get into the church that day. So that day started really early. And this was an Aretha Franklin impersonator. Yes. And in the crowd, you had people who I noticed wore their Sunday best. And even if they didn't plan on attending the funeral, they still wanted to be seen. So this is like one of my favorite portraits in the past recent years. This guy, he creates his own jewelry, his crown, everything. And he walks around like this in different events in Detroit. And he let it be known that he's not drinking alcohol. He's a juicer. So juice is in his chalice as he like walks around. And this is a mother and her children, and they're taking pictures near the pink Cadillacs. There were several pink Cadillacs lined up on 7 Mile near the church, and Mary Kay consultants from all over the country, they came to show their support and respect because of her iconic song that mentions the pink Cadillacs. So yeah. The second project is Connected Afro-Caribbean Community in Detroit. So the summer of 2018, I had the opportunity to be a part of the Documenting Detroit Fellowship. And during this time, I decided to document the Afro-Caribbean community here. And for this particular project, I really focused on the pageant that they have. So like annually, the girls have a Miss Carabao pageant, and these images show them rehearsing beforehand. And I like it a lot because you see the little girl to the right, and she's someone's little sister in there. And I feel that she was looking at them as an example. And I always wonder, like, will she follow in their footsteps and do it in the future? And then it's all about the shoes. They had to practice in their heels. So this is the day of the pageant. And they're all sitting around getting their makeup done, hair done, getting assistance from relatives. And this is a swimsuit selection. And what's so interesting, these girls were so much fun. They were very nice, and You know, a lot of people may think of pageantry in the traditional sense of what they may see on TV or movies as girls being catty or mean to each other, but these girls were so nice to one another. They were so friendly and so supportive of each other. And this is the first runner up. And I love this picture because you have her aunt to the left of her and then her mother to the right. And she was Miss Dominica. And I love it because she is a dark skinned girl. And oftentimes you don't get to see girls who are dark skinned to be adorned and celebrated like that. And she's there with her family and her trophy. And even though she didn't win, she still seemed like the winner to me in my eyes. This is the next day when we have the parade. And then the parade ends up in the street, and you have the music playing, people dancing, and just very lively. And it's something that's so interesting to see because people don't usually associate that with the Midwest, but it's been here in Detroit for decades. And a lot of people are just getting to know and find out, I feel, right? The last project is something that's like really near and dear to my heart is my COVID diary. I started my COVID diary last year at the beginning of the pandemic. And I decided to I had to be transparent with this. And one of the things that I had to be honest with and open with is that, yes, I live with my parents. And that was something like I was felt some type of way about, but it's like, Rachel, like, who cares? No one cares. Get over it. But the images that were produced during this time were some of my most honest, because usually with collage, I'm able to hide something and conceal something. And it could be really taken into someone's own interpretation. But with this, I'm just like bearing it all. And it was my first time doing this with personal work pertaining to my photography. My mother. Yeah, this image was taken during the time when I was having issues with insomnia. And I had to be open and honest about that. I had a lot of issues sleeping. And this picture was taken in the morning after 9. And I had been up since the previous day, since about like the afternoon when I woke up. So that was something that I struggled with for a while. Here it's my dad's birthday, and we usually have family over for cake and exchanging of cards. And this, yeah, it was not really somber. It was like, okay, family can't come over, so he's gonna do what he enjoys. He's gonna work on his bike and make customizations to it, which is something that he loves to do. And that was in April, by the way. Fast forward to May, and we're waiting for my mother to come outside because we're giving her a social distance birthday celebration. The second that we had in our household, I honestly thought my dad's would be the last, naively, but it was not, because a month later, it was my birthday, and it was my first time being able to be around friends I hadn't seen in a really long time. So I got to be in their backyard as they celebrated me on my special day. And the image on the left is like really funny to me because I'm hiding my toes because I hadn't been to a salon in God knows when. So I was like, okay, I'll take the picture, but I will hide my toes. And fast forward to November. This was Thanksgiving Day, and annually, the Detroit Lions play on Thanksgiving Day. And by this time of the day, we usually have our guests over, and they're waiting for dinner to be served. And here, my dad is watching the game by himself. And this was really somber because you're reminded when it comes to the big holidays just how much you relied on family to be there for entertainment and support and for food and cooking. But we had our own celebration, just the three of us. And fast forward to December, my mom retired from working at the same place for 43 years. And I always imagined me going there with her on her very last day to document it in my own special way. But of course, because of COVID, I wasn't able to do that. So this was the best I could do. And last image, earlier this month, my mom received her first COVID vaccination. So I really wanted to do a portrait of both of my parents when they got their vaccination. Um, she's sitting in the same chair as she was in the green picture, the same chair in the same room. And yeah, in this picture, you could see the relief on her face. And before then, her and I were cracking jokes and everything. It just took a super long time because we just like to have fun. But this picture, it means so much to me because it's not necessarily the end, it's the beginning of something else in our COVID journey. So thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you all. I'm gonna give one final round of applause. And I feel like I need to just take a second to let what was just shared with us breathe, because you all shared, it was more than you just sharing images that you made. Like, you shared a piece of yourself, many pieces of yourselves. And yeah, I just want to hold some space for that because it was really beautiful. The things that I was jotting some notes down. The things that I wrote in all caps and circled were, one, like, this is history. I feel like you all being gathered here today with us and like sharing your work and your practice to this point, this feels historic because what you're making is holding and creating space on the record for all of your communities in a way that is just so powerful. And I think it's important to note that. And the other thing that I wrote was, this all feels like home. You've all tapped into like a visual language that I think you're pouring yourselves into your work, and you're finding ways to articulate who you are and where you come from and how you move through the world. And the fact that really you're all so early in your careers, and the fact that you found ways to do that is just so moving to me. So thank you again for sharing. I do, we got the chat blowing up. See, everybody's like very excited about this. So I do have a few questions, but I'm thinking maybe we can look at the questions some of the attendees have posed. I do have one question that I'll pose to all of you, and maybe we can go in the order that you presented. But my first question is, because you all have such deeply community rooted practices, I'm wondering how you establish trust with the folks who are sharing, their stories with you, and whose stories you're in turn sharing.
I'll share something just in the sense that I might have some experience with like making this work in an editorial sense. And again, everything that I do, even if it's for payment or eventually, really, if I get paid, it's to get support. It's because I recognize this is a project or something that I really deeply care about, but I really do need support. I need some sort of, backing to do this. So with that comes like extra backpack of responsibility, because now I know more people will be looking at this. It will be existing in this context that will like center a high dissemination of this visual. And I'd say the beginning is just like, I guess I never ever, it's rare that I would ever approach like part of my own community or a new community before it's rare that I would approach them for the first time with a pitch or with this like editorial. It's usual that I work to have done the research, have already spoken to people, have already made contacts, have already made friends, or just people ahead of time, even if you don't have support, even if you're just, you know, because ideally you're making that, again, kind of playing to the idea that you're making the work for you too, without any restrictions. But in the short end of it, I'll just say that I think whether I'm having to cold call someone or have like a e intro, it's like I really think that when you arrive like transparently ablaze with your passions, it reads, and it's also a good compass for like where you can go and where you maybe shouldn't go, because if you're not there and that with your head and your emotions, like, okay, find that thing that you are. So, and people really respond to that because it's respectful and it's exciting and it's historic, and it's a no-brainer to want to be involved with something like that because you respect it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, with myself and my approach as a photojournalist, well, I think, you know, even like just personal work, I'm very transparent with everybody on what it is that I'm doing. So say, you know, for the WES series that I had done, I transcribed the interviews that I had done with each person that I had interviewed and sent it back to them. And I said, this is the part I'm going to feature on my website and in my show. Let me know if this is okay. And some of them were like, actually, you know, my mind has changed. I don't want this part in there. Can you change it? I'm like, sure, you know, it's me. I'm the editor. So like, I can do whatever I want. But in terms of, you know, working with a publication, I'm also very transparent, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is what the pitch is. This is where this will be. And then I always ask people, do you have any questions for me as a photographer? Like, what do you want to know about this process? Because I think, and from my own experience in and with journalism prior to getting in it, like it feels like there's always like no transparency, right? There's always like, I'm just gonna take from you, and you're never gonna see me again, and you're never gonna see this. And so I really want to work at breaking down those barriers and like showing people the value of journalism and the value of photography. And I think that begins with transparency.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Rachel. I just, that really jumped out to me about all of your work, that you're working like across and you're working in community. And I think it means a lot because, you know, we are often working with folks who we share community with, whose stories have been exploited. And so to show up and know that, you know, they have someone in you who cares about them, not just their, like what they can provide, but like them, that's really important. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like to be as transparent as possible with what I'm doing, like even who I'm working for, and I tell them where it's going. I don't consider myself a photojournalist at all. I'm an artist first and foremost. I'm an artist that happens to collect information. Okay. And in collecting information, I also like to get to know people. I ask, may I photograph you? I know there are times in the profession, like, or the moment, you're not gonna always get the opportunity to just ask somebody, but I've noticed that asking really makes a difference with the trust between me and the subject.
Thank you. Yeah, that kind of permission-based approach, I think makes a big difference. And it's cool to hear you all talk about this, because it's kind of like maybe this represents a changing of the guard, or like a new direction that photography in particular can go, because for so much of the history it has been kind of exploitative, and the person with the camera has the power, period. So the fact that you all are shifting those narratives, I think, is really really special. So we have some questions in the Q&A. Jo has asked several. So Samantha, what's the size of your large format pieces, and where do you show them? Is this public or private? And he says, they say, the readings did inform your work.
Oh, hi. Thanks for the question. I think it's such a privilege to get to talk about walls and spaces and putting this on a wall. So it's like, when I speak about it, it's such a great dream and grant oriented, like, okay, with support, I could do this. And the pieces that I am actually able to have, that I did make, were something I fronted on myself to be like, I want this and I want to see it. And maybe it's not even for sale at this moment. It's actually a personal piece. So for that matter, I feel like I've been working at like just very large scale. Like if it's a 4x5 image, that's the whole point, is that it can actually have so much information. So I want to reproduce that at least at like 44 by 34 or something, or at least. And ideally that's like the fine art way, but then there's also like a really good installation way of like working with stickers or working with like street postings. Actually, that's how I got in contact with Rachel. I love using Instagram just to like find wormholes of lovely work and people that you mess with. And that happens through looking at mutuals. And I just saw that Rachel alone works with, I'm like, does she work with stickers, or is she working with like adhesives? And that interested me. I work with that, and it's something I want to work with more. So like I actually hit her up and we did like a sticker swap, and it just starts like that. So yeah.
That's so cool. Shout out to connections. So Jaida, the next question is for you, that I accidentally answered, but you didn't answer. So we're just gonna bring it right back. Jaida, you talk about consent and collaboration. How does that translate into a legal reality? Do you get verbal or written consent, or question mark? And the PS is, beautiful images, without knowing the details, the importance of the images translate well. So this speaks to kind of the point that you were making earlier.
Yeah. So in terms of collaboration and consent, in the portraiture for my own publication, I have the same approach that I do with my personal work, in that, I go to them and I'm like, well, how would you like to be represented in this portrait? And in terms of like things like protests, something that I like to do is so like, I go up to somebody and I'm pointing, I'm like pointing at my camera, and I'm like, is this okay? Like, give me a thumbs up. And if they're like, yeah, it's fine, yeah, then I do it. But sometimes people tell me not to, which is totally understandable, and I do not. And sometimes there's instances in protest where you can't always get consent every single time. But I think you're gonna know when you don't. And so that was a big discussion this summer, about photographing protests and what that meant, like journalistically, as artists, as anything. And I think that got into being like a really sticky situation. And I think that's like a whole other conversation as well. But yeah, I think there's ways to approach that while, still staying true to being a photographer, whatever that means. So yes.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it can be murky for sure, but I think you do approach it with a lot of care, so that's appreciated. Jo also has a question for you, Rachel. What's your expected next project? PS, such lovely intimate work.
Thank you so much. Um, my next project, honestly, I don't know. And you know what? I told somebody recently, I don't even feel bad for saying that. I've done a lot. I've done a lot. And I document here and there. So it's not as regular as I was last year or as often, but periodically. I have to do what works for me in the moment. I have a lot of ideation of things that I want to do, and that's good enough. And it'll go from there. But right now, we'll say, like, I'm in the ideation phase of a few things that I'm thinking about. And I'm venturing back to collage and doing stuff like that because I haven't done any of that in a while. So, yeah.
Cool. I like that. The ideation is enough. That's a message right there. Maybe we all need to like pocket that. So thank you. So we do have a few more questions. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. And so maybe the final question, we can go with Beza's question, and maybe each of the panelists can use that to kind of, if there's anything final you want to say or to wrap up, you can add it in there. So Rachel, you did already speak to this, so I'm actually going to start with you, but again, anything you want to say to close it out. How have other photographers been able to connect with their communities during COVID? Or maybe anything COVID related with your practice, maybe we can open it up to.
Well, participating in a lot of different protests, opportunities such as this, whether it be a panel or just like a group discussion via Zoom, trading of stickers, like with Samantha, who will receive her soon. And, just that's pretty much it, other than like normal things you do through the phone or through a computer, but trying to do things outside of that, because now I feel like it's getting redundant. Not that this is, no, but just trying to like do something new with communication wise. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Samantha, Jaida, it's a toss up. Whoever wants to go first.
I can go. Yeah. I think what Rachel said, honestly, I'm actually working on kind of like a photo essay of dispatches, because I was thinking like, what is bringing people out during this time amidst a pandemic? Like, what are the issues that people feel most passionate about within the city that I live and work and love in? And so, I mean, I think just attending a wide variety of protests just kind of for that connection. And gosh, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, yeah, I think we miss each other so much right now. I think we really miss being around other people. And one of the only ways that I've seen community gatherings is through protest, which I think is really beautiful. And so that's primarily been the way that I have been connecting with community lately. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say almost like an inverted response, where the way I'm working on bettering and strengthening and emboldening like myself in order to be there better for my community or for others. And so it's looked for me like this time has looked like slowing down and assessing my own self, my own practice, as well as like plotting. It's very me that I'm like a plotter, a long-term person. So I'm like, how can I best execute this? How can I be louder? How can we be bigger? And like, yeah, that comes with, I think, like strategically taking care of yourself and the ways that you can activate yourself and excavate into you to make yourself even more impactful and bigger and more of a stable resource for others, as opposed to like burnout. Okay, you're here, now it's burnout. So I think that has been something I didn't know I was going to ever encounter, that, or that it even was an issue. But like this time has allowed me, has really like put a lot of things to my face that you can't ignore. So yeah, I'm mad grateful for how tending to yourself and not only affects you and your work, but it absolutely affects the sustainability of your practice and how you can show up for those you love.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there is something to that coming inward. And that's a really good note to close on, because I know I'm going to be leaving this conversation thinking about all of your work and really reflecting on like my own work and what I'm bringing to the table, and, you know, how I can kind of move with some of the spirits that you've shared with us tonight, because I think, again, the work is incredible and we're grateful. So another round of applause for you all for everything you brought into the space today. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight for, you know, your generosity in the chat and with your questions. Thank you to Pen America for co-sponsoring. Yeah, this has been really, really great. We're going to send this conversation out. We're going to share it. So I'm glad that it's, again, on the record in that way. We have another event coming up, as Rachel, our engagement editor, referred to at the beginning of the evening. The next event is Wednesday, April 28th at 7 p.m. And it's titled By Us and For Us, Writing Your Rust Belt Story. So that's going to be another great and exciting event to tune into. I'm so thrilled that we get to be in community with each other. You know, the Rust Belt is a big region, covers a lot of ground, but events like this, I think, help me feel like we're neighbors, you know, and like there are some ties that bind, and I just couldn't be more happy to share this space with you all. So yeah, I guess that's what we have for the evening. Thank you all so much.